This is Tennessee Talks with United States Congressman Tim Burchett.
Hello, I'm Congressman Tim Burchett, and welcome back to Tennessee Talks. Today, I'm joined by my very good friend, Congressman Jared Moskowitz from the great state of Florida. Jared and I serve on two committees together, Foreign Affairs and the Oversight and Accountability Committees. We usually talk about UFOs or UAPs, as some of the new folks to the deal call it. But when we're together today, we're going to talk about the ongoing conflict in Israel. And Jared, I want to thank you for joining me today, brother.
No, thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Let's start from the beginning. Can you give my listeners a brief overview of what's going on in Israel right now?
So right now, shortly after they got a number of hostages out, the talks broke down with Hamas because Hamas refused to release additional women and children. And so Israel now is back to prosecuting the war on Hamas now in southern Gaza. And so, they're trying to continue to find Hamas wherever they are in order to root them out of the Gaza Strip, not just for Israel's security, but also, quite frankly, freeing the Palestinian people from the controls of Hamas, because we've seen Hamas use them as human shields. We've seen Hamas locate weapons in kindergartens and in hospitals. And there can never be a Palestinian state so long as Hamas is in control. So this is necessary for the region to move forward so that there can be a two-state solution and there can be a Palestinian state and they can link the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. But that's never going to happen so long as Hamas remains in control of Gaza.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but did they not vote in Hamas as their ruling power?
No, they did.
They did.
And people forget one of the ways Hamas came to power is they killed Palestinians in a coup.
Yeah.
Okay. It was they were killing people in the Gaza Strip that were part of the Fatah party. Is how Hamas came to power. Of course, no one likes to talk about that. They only like to talk about when Jews are involved.
Right. And I agree with you there. You've been very outspoken about your support for Israel, and you voted to stand with Israel, which I thought was a good stand, obviously. And you condemned Hamas, even when it wasn't a unanimous vote in your party. And frankly, it wasn't in ours. Why do you think supporting Israel and the Jewish community is so important to you personally? I know you're Jewish, but obviously.
Look, there's, let's bifurcate that out because I really think it's two separate things, and we see that what's going on.
Bifurcate. Yeah, is that a Floridian word?
That word is coming to Tennessee. We haven't sent it to you yet, but it'll be there. It'll be there soon.
I'll look for it.
We'll email it. So the answer is that Israel is important because of what happened at the Holocaust. Right. First of all, this is the Jewish land. We were expelled from the land. We have a tie to the land for thousands of years. But after the Holocaust, the world decided it was clear that there needed to be a safe home for the Jewish people.
Right. And Truman, he was urged by, wasn't a Jewish friend of his I can't remember the exact story, but he was not in that camp, so to speak.
Right. Although eventually when he got there, he recognized it within several minutes of it being established. And look, you're talking about that came on the heels of the systematic extermination of the Jewish people by Hitler in Germany, where, they were
6 million
concentration camps. Yeah, Hitler killed 10 million people. 10 million people. 6 million Jews went through extermination under Hitler in Germany and throughout Europe as he, marched his way, seizing country after country. That's why Israel is so important. And now it's important because it's a democracy. It's an ally in the region. It brings order in the area. There's a lot of reasons why it's important today. Why is it important? To support the Jewish community. I mean, we're a minority. I know people don't want to give me and Jews a minority status because we don't look like minorities.
You look like me.
But there's only 15 million Jews.
Maybe not as handsome, but you do look like me.
Yeah, I'm definitely not as handsome, Tim. As you said, the camera, you look great on the tube. Do they still have tube TVs by you? You still see the tube TVs?
No. We do have 8 tracks, but just no tubes.
It's good to hear. But I mean, there's 15 million Jews in the entire world, not in the U.S. In the whole planet, there's 15 million of us, and there would have been 250 million of us if not for the Holocaust. And so we are a minority, and we are a persecuted minority, and we get blamed for everything. And it's important for everybody else to stand up for us because, if Jews are persecuted, then it's the next and it's the next. And we have to fight against hatred, regardless of where it comes from, at all times. And we can't let the misinformation and conspiracy theory about Jews, be pervasive. Another word I'll send you.
I use that word. It's good.
Do you like that word?
It's good. Hey, one thing I did want to say, it always strikes me as it's odd that you hear about, white supremacists, Nazis, what have you, are critical of Jews. Then they claim to be Christians when Jesus, in fact, was a Jew.
Yeah.
To me, that just seems it just seems ironic, if not weird.
I said this on, I think it was Fox the other day. I said, bipartisanship is waning in this country, except when it comes to being an anti-Semite. Right? There seems to be plenty of people on the left and the right that agree that Jews are the problem. And it's something that's been under the surface for a while, and but it's now bubbling up. They're seizing on this opportunity. Right? Look, there shouldn't be a ceasefire until Hamas is removed in Israel. But look, that's a foreign policy position that people can advocate for.
Right.
But when you see these rallies and you see people holding up signs that say "Gas the Jews, kill the Jews," that's a foreign policy of Hitler.
Yeah.
And we can't let that be normalized.
Well, I know there's a lot of conflict. This goes right into my next question. A lot of conflict in the U.S. about Israel. And a lot of folks come out pretty strong against Israel. Why do you think that Israel is so controversial in the United States?
Because we like to make everything simple, right? So we like to say things like, you're either good or bad, right? You're either the oppressor or you're the oppressed.
Right.
Well, if you look at Israel, it's flourishing. It's doing well.
Yeah.
It's making peace with its neighbors. If you look at Gaza, it's not doing well. Why? Because the leaders of Hamas took billions of dollars that they were given, and instead of building universities and hospitals and schools, they built water, power, right? Hotels, right? I mean, it is a beautiful area of the world that they have, quite frankly. And instead, they stole the money from the Palestinians. They invested in tunnels. Why is the leader of Hamas worth $5 billion?
And living in Qatar.
Did he invent a tech company? No, he stole that money. He stole all that money. So if you want to know why Gaza didn't look great before the war, it's because Hamas took all the money from the people. And so, again, Israel looks like the oppressor, on its face. But that's not the case. It's Hamas that committed this act of war against Israel. It was Israel who left the Gaza Strip 20 years ago and said, here you go. In fact, Israel made Jews leave Gaza in order to turn it over to the Palestinians and hope that we would eventually get a Palestinian state. But of course, they turned deal down after deal down. I also think you see the hatred against Israel because, our good friends, kidding, of course, in Russia and China are feeding misinformation to young people on TikTok.
Yeah.
Just false pictures. They're showing them pictures of what happened in Syria, that Assad, when he killed his own people, gassed hundreds of thousands of people. They're showing, pictures of, babies getting killed. And by the way, war is horrible. People die in war. Kids die in war. But the only one responsible for doing that is Hamas. Hamas started the war, and Hamas is using these kids as human shields.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think you see the anger and the hatred towards Israel.
Okay. I really want a shorter answer, but I'll take that one.
No problem.
All right. Since the conflict between Israel and Hamas started, what do you think of the U.S.'s response so far?
Well, look, I think Biden it's a 10 out of 10 on this issue for me, because let's start with the bigger problem. This was really an opportunity for Iran to take advantage and start the war that Iran has wanted to start and talked about. Wiping Israel off the face of the earth, dragging the U.S. into it, right? Russia getting us to get bogged down here so that we're not helping in Ukraine. And Biden stopped that from happening. He moved, the aircraft carriers into position. He used diplomacy behind the scenes. He built a coalition, and Iran didn't. Yeah, there's little skirmishes here and there, but Iran didn't get involved. And then Hezbollah didn't get involved either. So that is a huge victory to keep this self-contained.
I think somebody, I heard an Israeli high up basically said that was their not talked about mistress, where they would, they'd have to say on the surface, "Oh, we don't approve of that," but then that really where it stopped. I can remember one time when Israel did something, they launched an attack on somebody, and it was I can't remember who it was at the time, but I think they were developing nukes, and the world was outraged, and Reagan said something like, "Yeah, y'all don't do that anymore." And that was about it, and it's the same type of
And
deal.
think about it. I mean, Joe Biden, right, for all the knocks he gets, got on Air Force One and flew to Israel right after this attack.
I did think that was a pretty gutsy move. I agree with you.
And embraced not just Netanyahu, but embraced the country.
Yeah.
And let the country know, quite frankly, that the commitment they made to Israel was good. That's what that was about, which was, we've made this commitment to you, Israel, as a country, and we're here to deliver on our promise. And so, while you and I think have disagreements on the president on a myriad of issues, I really think on Israel, I think he's done what a president should do in this situation.
Okay. After the conflict is over, what do you see the future for Israel and its people?
Well, I really think that this is an opportunity for two things to happen simultaneously. One, which is once they get rid of Hamas's military capability,
right?
My hope is that Israel will make a deal with the Saudis, which was very close and in the works, and simultaneously, as a result of that deal, we will create a Palestinian state with Gaza and the West Bank, with new leadership and money from the Arab world to rebuild this area, to give them real education, real health care, and a real country. But that country has to recognize Israel. And I think if that can happen, this moment, and the people who died as a result of this war, I think if that's what comes out of this, it will be a seminal moment for the Middle East.
Right.
And if it doesn't, then it'll be a missed opportunity by people in the region who have turned down other peace deals. I mean, Yasser Arafat turned down East Jerusalem as the capital of the Palestinian state. How many young people know that? How many young people know that the Palestinian leader turned down a state, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, right of return, East Jerusalem? Turn it down. And so I'm hopeful that the Arab world unites with Israel and makes this happen and gives it to them and says, here, and we link Gaza and the West Bank. Because otherwise, 10, 15, 20 years, we'll be right back in this situation again.
If not sooner. All right. This is the part where you get to ask me anything you'd like, Jared.
Okay. So I'm sure you saw the news. Speaker McCarthy is leaving Congress. What are your thoughts on that?
I wish him well. I hope he's happy in his new endeavors.
That's it. That's all I get.
That's all you get.
So okay, I'm gonna make it more complicated.
All right.
So I always think politics and timing, go along, right? Like sometimes people win or lose races based on timing. Timing is everything. Do you think if October 7th had happened first, before the speaker vote, do you think that the removal of Kevin McCarthy doesn't happen because of October 7th?
Refresh my memory. October 7th.
The massacre in Israel, the war. Do you think that factors in? Because sometimes foreign events change things domestically.
Yeah.
My brain often thinks about that. And it goes back to the timing in politics where that happened at a time of relative calm versus now a time of real uncertainty in the foreign area.
Yeah. I don't know that it would have been brought up at that time, actually. I think it probably would have we'd have waited for a different time.
Right. See, that's my point, right? It's just an interesting kind of, political tidbit that it just goes to show you politics and timing are a real marriage. Sometimes a divorce. Yeah.
Well, Jared, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. The state of Florida is lucky to have you, and I'm glad I got you as a good friend. I often talk about you. I always say God has given you an incredible brain, and you I'm envious of your.
It's a Smurf brain, but it's good.
I don't.
It works.
I'm not
little tiny brain.
Yeah, but it works. It sure as heck does. Anyway, I'm Congressman Tim Burchett. I want to thank y'all for listening to another episode and watching another episode of Tennessee Talks. I don't know why they keep putting listening in my notes, but they need to change that. But anyway, I want to thank y'all so much for joining for another episode of Tennessee Talks. I'm Congressman Tim Burchett, and thank y'all for sending me here.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Right on. It's my pleasure, bud.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Tennessee Talks. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Keep up with Congressman Burchett by following Rep. Tim Burchett on Twitter and Instagram, and Congressman Tim Burchett on Facebook and YouTube.